actually, that little blurb is on Shakespeare's tomb itself. So that kind of concept, apply it to, of course, Carter, who would have read some Shakespeare, and they would have taken that and ran with it literally to turn it into something much more foreboding for, the general populace that had wanted to come and see the site. But how do we look at those things? Like, because you, like me, I'm more science minded, and I like to research things to find out the pros and cons, or the truths and untruths. How do you feel in terms of, do you think this curse has any validity? I mean, I kind of.
Well, in the 1970s, I was fortunate enough to see the treasures when they were on
Yes,
their
I did
worldwide
too.
tour.
I was working at the museum
and
then.
yeah, I got to see them when they came here to Canada. And wow, I'll tell you, some of that stuff,
Oh yeah.
that golden mask was, unbelievable. So I've seen some of the treasures, and hey, I'm still here.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing though too, right? I'm not even sure that it's people viewing the treasure that would have been. It was people, breaking into the tomb and removing the body, which was probably more specific. But it's true. I mean, it's a phenomenal find, and I don't even think that to this day. I know they just discovered another tomb that's supposedly going to rival Tut's, but I'm not sure at this point if it's actually come to fruition in terms of what's in it. But I find it interesting. I mean, here's some other things to talk about, because I do this when I do my mummy unwrapping, and I do it jokingly, yet maybe not quite so jokingly. I always ask people, do they have a hanky with them? And I mean, now, we're all wearing masks, right? To keep away the COVID virus. When you go into these old tombs, there is a possibility that there's toxic pathogens inside. And that you can certainly be affected by this. So there's a couple of things, speculations here and there too, with people. We're talking about Carnarvon's death and speculating that perhaps it was the toxic pathogens, because maybe he had a weakened immune system. He did have a chronic illness, and I don't really know what it is. I don't know that it's ever been kind of put out there. But, is that a possibility? Well, I think we now know that he didn't die from toxic pathogens, that he did get septicemia. But it makes for a good story.
If I can interject there,
Yeah, go ahead.
interesting that you mentioned that, because I was reading that the murals on the walls inside of Tut's burial chamber,
right,
they're now being taken over by mold spores.
Yes.
And because his burial was apparently very rushed, they just painted all their hieroglyphs and just sealed the tomb up.
Right,
and
they were still damp.
And the paint hadn't dried yet, and all these the mold spores are in there. So when they cracked open that tomb, this ancient air comes rushing out into their faces.
Right. And I mean, and this is still something today, even going into a tomb now. I would tend myself to want to wear a respirator of some sort. Forget about even just a mask, but an actual respirator, because you don't know what's in that tomb. First of all, if it's so tightly sealed that the air cannot get in or out, you are trapping potentially anything in there that is toxic. So whether the body, in the case of mummies, the body has been mummified, but for the most part, a lot of mummifications were not well done. So there could still be moisture in the skin. There could still be mold. There still could be, rotting and things that go on with that. But also the food items that were put into these tombs, right? Like hundreds of pounds of food that as soon as, yes, that new air, that air gets in, everything starts to go bad. And it may be dry, it may be, but if that food at the time had any mold spores on it or any kind of mold or pathogens, it's quite possible that that gets released the minute you open up that air seal, that lock, right? It's gone.
That's
And
right.
now you've let, but the other thing with that too is the damage that happens when you do that, because now you're letting in moisture and air and pollution and all of these things that didn't have access to that tomb thousands of years ago. And Cairo is very polluted. The air quality is really not good there, and so they are suffering even outside. A lot of the um, monuments and things that are left are suffering a great deal from pollution and damage from pollution. So you're having this, but not to mention too, all of the public over the 100 years that has gone into the tomb and visited the tomb, and you're going in there and people are touching the walls and people are touching, so you're carrying oils and bacteria and all kinds of things as well, as we
And
know.
just your breath.
We just need to look at the pandemic, right? How easy it is to do that. We breathe out. We don't wear gloves on our hands. We do all these things. So going into these sites, you're getting exactly, you're probably getting more damage by going in than possibly you're going to get from when you're in there. I mean, if you're wearing a respirator and you're, properly covered. I mean, I've always sort of thought of people just walking into these sites completely unprotected as a bit insane. I mean, if the site's been open for many years and it's had time to, but if this is a new, like if I was going to go, I have never been on an Egyptian site, like new site that's been opened, but I've been on other dig sites where we're digging stuff up from the ground and you can smell the mold. You can smell that, like you're just like, oh, that, it's like, let's put on the mask, right? You can smell that coming from the earth. You can smell the mold, like and sometimes it's just layers of rotting wood or things like that. But you can really smell that stuff in the earth. In a tomb, I don't know. I've not been in one that hasn't already been opened. So, but I mean, today it would be so much smarter to be wearing literally hazmat suits. First of all, you're protecting yourself, but you're also protecting the site from your contaminants that are going in, right? So, I mean, that's the preservation and, sort of conservatory side of me going, I get a little bit angry when I see people just rushing in, oh, I found it. And, it's still akin to this 1922 mindset of just, rushing into a tomb. Not everyone does that, of course. That just depends on who the head archaeologist is on the site and how they run things. But, and when we see shows like, the ones, what I'm trying to think of his name, Josh from, yeah. And it looks like he's going in for the first time. Well, we know he's not really going in for the first time. And, I think there was one where they opened the tomb and they did actually wear masks and they did, they were taking some safety precautions. But for the most part, I mean, who knows what was in that tomb? Like you said, at that time, right? It was rushed. It was painted within, it was a very short period of time. I don't know exactly how long it took them to but that tomb was rumored to have been for somebody else. But now they're starting to realize that it may not have been for someone else. It just may have been an empty tomb within that family plot, right? That family burial. So they rushed to, but you can see though, that it's rushed because the sarcophagus that was used is way huge for the space, right? So
It was, yeah.
it was, yeah, it was incredibly huge. Now here's something that I don't know if you know or don't know.